and this is new books for fall 2016. This is philosophy. So I've got the first one here is Plato's Theaetetus or something. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. And I was just reading a bit of it here, and I want to read some of this. If you haven't read any of Plato, it's quite good because it's very easy to read because it's all in, I think all of it. All of what we have from Plato is in dialogue form. And so when Socrates is speaking, it's all just about like Socrates says something and the other person says, oh yes, of course. And so let me just read some of it. So he says, Socrates, tell me then, you learned some geometry from Theodorus. And this other person named Theaetetus says, yes. And some astronomy, harmonics, and calculation? Well, I do my best to at any rate. Yes, so do I. From him and from anyone else who might take to have some grasp of those subjects. All the same, although I do reasonably well with them in general, there's a small point that I have difficulty with, which you and our friends here must help me look into. Tell me, learning is becoming wiser about what one's learning, isn't it? Of course. And it's by virtue of wisdom, I imagine, that wise people are wise. Yes. Now, is that all that is that at all different from knowledge? Is what? Wisdom. Isn't it the case that people are wise in precisely those respects in which they're knowledgeable? Of course. So knowledge and wisdom are the same? Yes. Well now, the point that I have difficulty with, and can't find an adequate grasp of in myself, is just this. What exactly knowledge really is? So can we put it into words? What do you all say? Which of us is going to be the first to speak? And it goes on and on. So, and then maybe I'll just read what the answer is. So after a little bit of trying to get people to participate, because I guess Socrates thinks, and based on this, it seems like the audience that Socrates has with him are a little intimidated by the question. But finally, this Theaetetus guy, and that the name of the dialogue is this Theaetetus, finally he speaks up and says, very well then, it seems to me that the things one might learn from, geometry and the subjects you listed just now, are kinds of knowledge, and also that all the arts of the shoemaker and other craftsmen, all together and each individual one of them, are knowledge and nothing else. So, and then they go on and discuss it. So, if you're not at all, that privy in philosophy, even just reading Plato, it's very easy. Aristotle is much more difficult because Aristotle writes in prose. He writes as if it's nonfiction. He writes like a typical philosophy text that you'd read in a textbook today. But Plato it's all dialogues and Socrates having discussions, and then you have to derive from that the philosophical implications about what knowledge is. That's epistemology. So when they're discussing this, they're discussing epistemology. But it's not like in a textbook where it would say epistemology and then a whole bunch of paragraphs that are written as if it's nonfiction. These are dialogues, and they're often more approachable to the average person. So that's Plato's Theaetetus, or however that's pronounced. So a couple other books here on critical thinking. Teaching Critical Thinking. This is by John McPeck, and it's a nice little book. I found this at the library sale, and I thought this will hopefully be some philosophy in here, so I thought I would check that out. And another one, Critical Thinking and Education, by the same author. So I thought that'd be interesting to check out. For a while, it was a bit of a fad in education, but I think it's kind of disappeared now. So it was an injection, I think, of reasonableness into education, and I think what the problem was is that they were trying to see how young could you start teaching critical thinking in the classroom. And I think they found, I don't think the results were that great. I think they found that it made little difference, unfortunately. All right, here's basically a textbook on aesthetics. Aesthetics, the classic readings. And I don't think I really have any books on aesthetics, so I thought maybe that would be worth having. And it's got the typical stuff. It's got Plato, Aristotle, David Hume, Kant, Hegel, etc. John Dewey, Heidegger. So I thought that would be worth looking through. Here's a book I've been looking for a while, and I eventually did find it. Dennett's Freedom Evolves. I think I got this. I also ordered, I should mention, I also order from maybe every other year. I'll place an order with what's called Better World Books, and they're in the US, but they ship it anywhere. And they have really good prices. And if you wait for their summer sales, then it's really good prices, and there's free shipping. And they have a ton of used books. They're like a used book in big inventory of those. And so that's where I found this book. I've been looking for it. So you may know that Dennett is a determinist, and I think he's arguing in this book that freedom and free will is an illusion, and it's something that had to be developed to keep people sane, that they were actually making choices. It's almost like it was a necessary ingredient in consciousness that we needed to feel that we were in control of our lives. Otherwise, it would break down. So anyways, I'm curious to see, I'm curious to read this at some point. From Dennett, one of the Four Horsemen, of course. Here's a book on Descartes. I should get rid of that stupid price label thing. It wasn't $5, let me tell you. It was, all these books were much cheaper than that. Descartes, Key Philosophical Readings. Pretty important in the rise of science and positivism. So I will add that to the library for my reference. Here's a nice little one. I actually have some of the other ones in the same style of cover. Some of this in the same series, I guess. So this is on Bishop Berkeley. I've heard it pronounced that way, even though it's not really quite spelled that way. But I guess this is Bishop Berkeley, and I can't tell you much about him. I don't really remember what his particular point of view is. So, but anyways, I'll add that to the other series that I have. I think I've got Plato and Aristotle and Hume and Kant. So I've got a bunch of those different ones that look like that. And here's the last one, Contemporary Debates. I think this is from the Better World book sale too. Contemporary Debates on Epistemology. I was curious to know like what's going on nowadays. Now this book I think is a little dated. It's not quite up. This is 05, so it's 10 years old. I was curious to know what's going on now in epistemology. Where are there actual discussions and issues with it? Because I haven't found epistemology to be really that controversial, but so I'm curious to find, okay, where are the postmodernists arguing about various things, and how do you even stand on such a claim as subjectivity of knowledge without making an objective claim in the first place? So, anyways, so there's all kinds of stuff on skepticism here, and back and forth, and people who are for skepticism, people who are against it. So, anyways, I thought that would be good to look through to see what some of the contemporary, that's a decade old, arguments are and what's going on in the field. Because it's somewhat my area, but I'm also in the education area. So, okay, so next will be science.